Good afternoon, everybody. Hurricane Helene is now just a smidge away from being a major hurricane, Category 3. I think at the last update we got, we were just about there, and it's tracking through the Gulf of Mexico. Landfall is expected this evening along Florida's Big Bend. This storm has a large, expansive wind field. We've been talking about that. We'll see a progressive increase of wind speeds throughout the afternoon, with the peak starting early this evening and going through midnight, and then a gradual wind down through sunrise on Friday. There could be isolated storm surge of up to 3 feet along the St. Johns River, in particular the San Marco, downtown riverfront, Hogan's Creek, Southampton, Riverside, Ortega, and Ribault areas. High river levels will peak from 6 to 8 p.m. this evening and from 6 to 8 a.m. on Friday. So those same trouble spots that we always have, we need to watch throughout the remainder of those times. For our beaches community, we are also under a coastal flood warning with up to 3 feet of surge expected. We ask you to please stay out of dangerous waters. This is not the time to be in the surf, and we will not have lifeguards out there, so please stay out of the waters at the beach. Our tornado risk continues throughout the day and this evening, with those outer bands continuing to come in the area, and we are expected to enter a tornado watch this afternoon, which means that we all need to stay alert for potential tornado warnings. If a warning is issued, you need to find a safe room within your house, wherever you are, that has interior walls where you can go and take shelter. All in all, please remain sheltered at home today and tonight if at all possible. If you don't have to be on the roads, it's just a great time to be in and hunker down. Please don't venture outside in the wind lulls between the outer bands. As we've talked about earlier, we have such saturated grounds from all the rains that we have, so trees are going to be weakened with root systems loosened up, and all of that is going to cause us a problem in terms of trees coming down. So there have been fatalities from this in past storms, and we really would like to avoid that if at all possible. So please stay away from floodwaters as well. The sheriff asked me to remind you to please not drive through floodwaters. That presents you with a particular problem, and certainly for them too if they have to come and fish you out. So as a reminder, keep your phone charged. Download Jack's Ready. That app is really helpful, and it will contain all the new information, updated information. And this is going to be a fluid storm, y'all. When we get into the later hours of this evening, there's a lot that we still don't know about how much this is going to affect us. So stay up to date with that Jack's Ready app and pay attention to your local meteorologist for real-time updates. In terms of our public safety teams, our emergency road access team, or ERAT, are staged in Riverside, Normandy on the west side, near Jacksonville Farms, Terrace, Mandarin, Sandalwood, Southside Estates, East Arlington, and on the south side and north side. The job of our ERAT teams will be to clear any roadways that become blocked by downed trees or power lines, so first responders can travel safely through. We want to make sure, again, to say to you, please reserve the 911 lines for true emergencies, and call 630 City if you have any issues beyond emergent situations. We need you to keep those emergency lines open. We also have swift water teams staged downtown and in St. Nicholas in case there is a rescue need in any of the flooding situations. JSO will have 40 additional police officers ready to go on top of the regular patrol teams. Let's see. Additionally, we have so many JEA crews out there. I really want to thank JEA for the staff up. I mean, they're very prepared. They've seen this before. If we have tornadoes, that's going to cause us a tremendous problem. They've got 430 line workers out there, 250 wastewater crew members, 130 tree removal crew members. All in all, 2,200 member workforce is working today and tomorrow. And I do want to ask for your patience. I know everybody gets frustrated with power outages. We are going to have power outages with the winds like they're going to be. We have almost 900 square miles of city here. So please know that our JEA crews, that's 8,200 miles, y'all. 8,200 miles of power lines. So please make sure that you're patient with these crews. They're going to be out in every way they can be, as long as it's safe, trying to get power back on as quickly as they can. They're going to address the greatest needs first, essential services first. So please do be very, very patient in that process. Bucket trucks can only go up if the winds are 30 miles per hour or under. So again, we're going to have several hours of conditions where the winds are going to be higher than that. So they'll be out as conditions permit. JEA CEO Vicki Cavey asked that we remind you that it's not just the power lines. When trees come down, roots go up, and they bring water and sewer lines with them. That's why we have wastewater crews ready to go. Another reminder, any scheduled disconnections are going to be discontinued through the storm, so you do not have to worry about your power being disconnected in the duration of this storm. Our Public Works Department has 10 stormwater teams staffed up today and tonight. Pumps are staged in San Marco, and we have 5 pumps in reserves ready to go as needs arrive. We also have had crews out yesterday. I want to give a special shout out to Nina Sickler in our Public Works Department. We had a lot of calls to 630 City yesterday saying, hey, you guys told me to clean up the stuff from the yards, but now it's sitting out on the curb, and what's going to happen to it? So we brought extra crews out yesterday afternoon, and that's continuing to pick up roadside debris. They have picked up 1,200 cubic feet of yard waste off of curbs to ensure that it didn't become projectiles. So thank you to our Public Works crews for being on top of that. If you have debris from missed yard waste collections, it needs to be brought in and secured during the storm, though, please. No special collections will be performed today outside of our normal collection. We're going to be keeping solid waste pickup on schedule for today and tomorrow, as long as it's safe to do so. If there are any homes missed on those days, again, that pickup will be on Saturday morning. 2 important reminders. If you see downed power lines or trees, again, 630 City, 630-2489. That is staffed 24/7 through the duration of the storm. If you suspect a safety issue or a live wire, or you see something that is sparking, that's where you can call 911, or if you feel like you are in an emergent situation. Again, we want to keep those 911 operators available and the 911 crews. As far as our bridges are concerned, the Florida Department of Transportation works closely with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and the Florida Highway Patrol to monitor the wind conditions on the bridge. Bridges will remain open until weather conditions make that bridge unsafe for travel. At that point, FDOT will work with law enforcement to make sure that the closures are communicated via media channels and social media, and Jack's ready. As you've seen in the past, what happens is when those sustained winds get at 40 or above, they'll shut down the bridges. That's usually sort of a, like this. They'll be shut down, they'll be opened up, they'll be shut down, they'll be opened up. That's generally how it's going to work. So you're going to have to just be patient with that process when the winds do pick up. We had a question yesterday about University and I-95. That, per DOT, is open and operational. In terms of our shelters, we currently have about 250 citizens in our 5 shelters. They will be open throughout the duration of the storm. Please use them if you are in a low-lying area, a mobile home, or under a heavy tree canopy. Again, our biggest concern here is isolated tornadoes and trees coming down because of the saturated grounds and the winds that we're expecting. People with special needs should continue to contact 630 City, 630-2489. We have also been proactively calling through the Special Needs Registry offering rides. JTA is providing free transportation to those shelters on an ongoing basis. Atlantic Coast High School is special needs only and also pet friendly. We also have Chaffee Trail Elementary, the Legend Center, Landmark Middle, and La Villa School of the Arts. Those are all of our shelters that are open. If you're planning to take advantage of a shelter downtown, remember there are 2 locations, that's Legend Center and La Villa, that are near downtown. In terms of Ken Knight Drive, a number of you asked about Ken Knight Drive yesterday. JTA is providing free shuttles for Ken Knight Drive residents throughout the duration of this storm, okay? So that's going to happen every 15 to 30 minutes. So the people that want to get picked up there and taken over to the Legend Center, they will be able to do so. The Kings Avenue Garage is open to the public for residential parking. So if you live in a low-lying area that's prone to flooding, you can go park in the Kings Avenue Garage. The Fixed Route and First Coast Flyer buses will begin flood detours at 4 p.m. unless weather conditions deteriorate sooner. You can again download the MyJTA app to stay up to date on any route changes. JTA will continue to run regular operations on JTA's fixed bus route, BRT, First Coast Flyer routes, connection, and ready ride service as long as it is safe to do so. And at this point, we are anticipating that everything returns to normal on Friday. Obviously, as I said, with this storm really hitting primarily into the evening and overnight, we really are going to have to monitor that, and I hope you will stay tuned to Jack's Ready and to your local TV stations to make sure that you're aware of any changes that happen with debris on the road or anything that may happen to change the cadence of things. The St. Johns River Ferry is closed. Will be open again tomorrow. That's what we anticipate anyway. Skyway, same thing, is closed and hopefully will be open when it's safe to be open tomorrow. Getting a lot of calls about the airport. Some flights have been canceled, not all. You're going to have to contact your particular airline. We heard from the airport this morning that if all airlines decide to shut down operations, you cannot think of the airport as a shelter. So they will clear the airport if all airlines cease operations. So please keep up to date with your flights and find out if in fact they are canceled or they are operational. Let's see, anything else that I did not mention? Jack's Ready, I think we've talked about that plenty. I'm going to go ahead and invite Angie and Yeti from the National Weather Service to come up and tell us the latest on the storm, and then I'll come back for questions afterwards, okay?
Hey, good afternoon, Angie and Yeti, National Weather Service. As of 11 a.m., potent Hurricane Helene was just under major strength, Category 3 strength. The maximum winds were between 105 and 109 miles an hour. Category 3 is sustained 110, so we're right on the cusp. The forecast is still holding that Helene will continue to intensify as the system continues a northeast track towards the Florida Big Bend through the course of the day. And we are still anticipating for our family, friends, and communities that are west of the I-75 corridor, very devastating impacts. Locally, what does this mean? What we've been messaging is the wind field extent from the system is significant. In fact, all but 3 counties in Florida this afternoon are under either tropical storm or hurricane warnings. The entire state of Georgia and the entire state of South Carolina as well are underneath those wind, tropical storm, and hurricane warnings. That gives you an idea of the scope of the extent of anticipated wind impacts to the communities. For us here on the First Coast, we are going to continue to see deteriorating conditions as we go through the course of the day. We already have outer rain bands working their way up from the south. We've had tornado warnings in effect. We are underneath a tornado watch. That goes until 10 o'clock tonight. A watch is a heads up saying, hey, be aware for possible warnings. If you are under a tornado warning, you'll be alerted via your cell phone, other emergency alert notification systems. If you go underneath a tornado warning, we want you to get to your safe room inside your shelter, okay? Get to your safe place in your already place where you're hunkering down, okay? If a tornado warning is issued. As we continue through the course of the day, these bands of brisk, heavy rainfall and the tornado threat will continue. Our peak of the wind event for our local area is expected to be generally after 5 o'clock this afternoon through midnight tonight. That's when our strongest winds and wind gusts are expected. Again, those stronger wind speeds are going to be really focused on the coast, the riverfront, exposed open spaces, open areas. But certainly with that duration of wind for several hours and the saturated grounds that we've had recently, we are expecting tree damage, power line damage, as well as some structural damage. In terms of the storm surge, we are anticipating some storm surge inundation of generally 3 feet as we get into the evening high tide. Especially the more vulnerable communities will be those that are along the riverfront, and specifically talking areas that are north of the Buckman Bridge to downtown Jacksonville. This evening's high tide cycle, which is going to occur between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., that's where we're going to get that southerly wind push across the river as well. So high tide with that southerly wind push. Inundation of around 3 feet. We could see some areas that get around 4 feet of inundation. So it's not just this evening's high tide that we want to call attention to as well. Tomorrow morning's high tide cycle between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. will also bring elevated storm surge inundation to the same vulnerable areas. So just to recap, those specific communities I'm talking about, we're going to start over at Pirates Cove and work our way up to Riverside areas, St. Vincent's, Hogan's Creek, areas right near the Main Street Bridge, and then also San Marco. San Marco is a very vulnerable community, so we really want to call attention to that. And there's also some locations on the Ribault River as well that will be vulnerable to that storm surge. The dune structure on the coast, yes, we're going to have water rise and storm surge, but the dune structure will hold and really limit the storm surge risk to our coastal communities. Want to remind folks that as we have these waves of bands of rainfall coming across us, please do not go outside in what we call lulls. You'll get one band that comes across with heavy rainfall, and then the wind will subside a little bit. It is so dangerous to venture outside even between those lulls because of the wind stress that's happened on the trees. It's not going to take a really strong wind gust to possibly cause one of those to go down. So please remain hunkered down today and tonight as we feel the impacts of Hurricane Helene.
Thank you, Angie. And I just want to once again say that everything remains the same in terms of what our plans are in terms of bringing back city employees tomorrow. I think that's true for our beaches as well. We're all monitoring overnight, and we really do need you to stay in close contact with your television stations, with Jack's Ready. Make sure that you're monitoring, because if this should become a scenario where we have more tornadoes, or if we have more trees down, or there's impacts to the roads, we're going to be communicating that if we need to change that up. But as of right now, we are planning on having everybody back and having a bright sunny day at some point on Friday. That's the hope. So I'll open it up to any questions you have, and we will go from there.
Yes, Mayor Deegan, you mentioned that JEA has restrictions on wind gusts for their bucket trucks. Are there any restrictions to JSO and JFRD in terms of 911 emergency services based on wind speed or other conditions?
Not that I have heard of. You want to address that?
Yeah, it's. I think it's the same for both of our agencies. When they get above the 45-mile-an-hour range, especially with JFRD and the larger vehicles that we have to start then taking a look at whether it's safe to put them on the roads or not. So that's why we encourage everybody to do what the mayor's been suggesting and hunker down during this time, so that we don't have to put those folks out and put not only the first responders in danger to make rescues.
Yes, sir.
This is for either you, Mayor, or you, Ms. Ignetti, but are you expecting to see any additional sustained winds in the western part of the county?
Yes, absolutely. There's no portion of the county that's not going to be impacted by tropical storm force winds. So on the west side, generally on the west side, let's say 30 to about 40 miles an hour sustained. And then we could see gusts up to 60 at times. But really the stronger magnitudes are going to focus more towards our open spaces like the riverfront and over towards the coast.
And secondly, a follow-up question, considering how saturated the ground is, have we had an event like this where the ground has been saturated and then we have a tropical event on top of that you can recall? Is there any reference point to what we're dealing with at this moment?
Well, yes. Just about every year, this time of year is pretty much our rainy season, tropical season, so any kind of saturation on the ground with any kind of wind event is certainly going to cause trees to go down.
Other questions? Yes.
The 5 p.m. to midnight slot where the winds are going to be heaviest, is that going to be tropical storm force winds throughout that 7-hour period, or is there a way you can quantify what the wind's going to be like over that time?
Yeah, so that's kind of our main window of the strongest, more persistent, higher magnitudes, the higher wind speeds, I should say. But the winds are going to come in peaks and lulls. That's the behavior of these systems. So, for any one particular location, it's not necessarily going to be sustained at 45 miles an hour for 8 hours straight, right? The winds are kind of peaks and lulls. But during that time period, from about 5 p.m. till about midnight, I think that is for the First Coast area, for the Jackson metro area, our peak window of seeing some of the strongest wind impacts. But just to back up a little bit, even though that's our peak window for the stronger magnitudes, we're going to have building gusts through the course of the day. So I don't want folks to think that, okay, well, the peak is not until 5 p.m. That's not what we want to message. We want to say, hey, we need to be hunkered down because as we go through 5 p.m., the wind speeds are going to be progressively increasing with with the rain squalls and that continued tornado threat.
Also, it sounds like there'd be some nighttime damage taking place. Does that affect any of the emergency response by JEA? Does it make it harder for them to get out with the crews and work in nighttime conditions? Is
Well,
that a
listen.
factor for any of the other crews out there?
There's good and bad to that, David. You know, I mean, the fact that it is nighttime means hopefully most people are home and off the road, so that can create less complications for our crews. But certainly because they're having to work in the dark, that's why we're really asking everybody to please, if you don't have to be out, stay home, because we would prefer not to have any more complications. It's always harder to work in the dark, right? But if folks will please just stay home and monitor from the house, I think that will make their jobs a lot easier.
As far as JEA, does that make it harder for JEA to get out and work in nighttime conditions? Do you have to wait really to daylight to get in there and make those repairs to down power lines when you're able to because the wind's subsided?
Thank you so much for the question, first of all. Our men and women work through the night, around the clock, as long as conditions are safe, David. We will be out there. We work at night all the time. Mayor Deegan makes an excellent point. We don't want traffic going around them, swerving or anything. A reminder, we brought in a lot of outside contract crews as well to help us, 54 additional crews. And our water and wastewater folks will be out there as well. So we are prepared to work around the clock. Our work starts tonight.
To follow up on David's question about, so there obviously are parts of town where power lines are below ground, where power lines are above ground. In terms of power outages, what is typically what JEA sees at events like this? Is it the areas where power lines are above ground, or are people who also have their power provided below ground also susceptible to losing power during an event like this?
Thank you. Above ground lines are always more susceptible. The biggest problem we're going to have is fallen trees. And when trees go down, as Mayor Deegan says, power lines go down, water and wastewater lines come up. So you're definitely more vulnerable with overhead lines. Some underground could have some faults. Most of the time that's due to rain and some cabinets that are above ground. But we are very prepared. The areas with those oak trees, with those beautiful canopies and those low root systems are vulnerable.
I have a question for Angie, maybe. You know, day by day, the forecast has gotten more catastrophic for that area of the Big Bend area. Our local forecaster doesn't seem to have gotten worse day by day. Is there a reason why, even though it's causing so much more damage there in that part of Florida, it doesn't seem to have really ramped up the forecast here locally?
I want to take a step back first and identify that since the beginning part of the week, rapid intensification to major hurricane strength has been advertised for the Florida Panhandle. That potential has been messaged heavily. In terms of catastrophic, I do want to clarify that the catastrophic impacts expected from Helene, that life-threatening storm surge and the devastation of those major hurricane strength winds, are really going to be focused for those communities that are west of I-75 towards the Tallahassee area and obviously southward towards the coast. Locally, our message has continued to have been to prepare for tropical storm conditions. We've been messaging that, I believe, through the entire week. Our forecast that we've been preparing for, honestly, has not really varied that much. We haven't taken into account the systems, these little wiggles and wobbles that they do, a little bit to the west, a little bit to the east. That is accounted for in our preparation and forecast considerations as we're ramping up to respond the best we can across the city to such events. So I just want to say that there has been very consistent messaging from the Hurricane Center, from the fellow Weather Service offices of the catastrophic impact that Helene is going to have, and we have been preparing through the entire week for tropical storm impacts here.
Angie, I'm gonna throw a question in here too. So how far out from the center of the storm see, how many miles out from the center of the storm do you see hurricane force winds?
Well, at this point, the strongest winds are going to be within the inner core, and typically that inner core is under about 50 miles in diameter, but we're going to have to see, that can vary, where the storm actually makes landfall on where that diameter sets up. But typically, once the system makes landfall, the inner core will begin to contract or shrink. But given how fast Helene's moving, those strong hurricane force winds can push very far inland. In fact, the latest forecast from the Hurricane Center has hurricane conditions reaching into southwest Georgia. Away from the Jacksonville metro area, we are not expecting hurricane force winds here, but we still need to ready ourselves for those wind impacts from tropical storm conditions.
Anybody else? Okay, I think this is probably going to be our last update unless we get a surprise from this office, because we want to make sure that all of our crews not only are in position, but also making sure that everybody here has an opportunity to be home safe if they need to be. So you won't be getting another update from here today. We will obviously continue to share information, and I would ask you just to continue to keep the folks in the Big Bend in your thoughts and prayers. A major hurricane is no joke, and I hope everybody in this room, for all the wonderful work that is done here, can recognize how very fortunate we have been here in Jacksonville. I had somebody ask me yesterday, well, we've had several hurricanes move through here, and I said, you know what? Not really. We feel like we have because we've been on the fringes. We've certainly had some bad situations like we've had with Irma, but we still have not had a direct hit in Jacksonville since Hurricane Dora back in the 60s. So I hope you'll appreciate that grace that we have had here in this city. And please be safe and be careful. Heed what we've said so that our emergency crews can do the work they need to do and don't have to get in and get into any sort of a bad situation they don't need to be in. But very, very grateful that our community once again seems to be spared the worst. But thank you all so much, and we'll continue to share updates as we need them.